Goedenavond luisteraars, goedenavond. Dit is Radio Patapou Serieus, Je maintiendrai. Het is vandaag donderdag 19 juli geloof ik. Als ik mij niet heel sterk vergis. Nee, 18. 18, morgen is het 19. Ik ga niet op een oliebol zitten, dat lijkt me geen goed idee. 18, donderdag 18 juli. Het is net 9 uur geweest. We zijn de tune kwijt. Dus die gaat u vandaag niet horen, maar dit is Je maintiendrai, Radio Patapou Serieus. En we hebben een gast vanavond. En dat betekent dat we ook de rest van de uitzending in het Engels gaan praten. Want weliswaar komt onze gast uit Berlijn. Maar ons Duits is nou ook weer niet om over naar huis te schrijven. Dus als compromis gaan we gewoon lekker in het Engels. So, hello, Xenia. That's your name. Well, let's start. You are our guest tonight. This is the famous show of Radio Patapou Serieus, Je maintiendrai. This is my friend Kimball. This is my friend Hans. Usually there is another guy here as well named Bart, and we do the show every week. Usually we only do phone calls, so people phone in and then we talk to them. But so this is a special occasion that you are here, and there is a reason for that. So maybe we can start with that reason. Why are you here?
All right. I found this call on the internet by Vera Broos, and she organizes this Art for Art B&B in Nooijen-Meer. And I thought, okay, that sounds lovely, you know, going to a caravan and doing something, and in return for being able to stay in Amsterdam, which is completely unaffordable to us poor German artists nowadays, I applied with a project with a micro radio station out of my suitcase. It's I call this project Kofferradio. And tomorrow this will happen at Nooijen-Meer.
You call it Kofferradio? Okay. And what does it entail? What kind of things do you do on the Kofferradio?
Well, I do radio for quite some years, not as long as you, of course. I'm not such a legend, but for quite some time. And I recently, or in the last years, I experimented a lot with like unusual situations to broadcast radio from. I'm a big fan of FM radio, of UKW, and I'm experimenting with transmitters. So I'm part of the Deutsche Radio team from Berlin. We broadcast from allotment gardens, like tiny gardens and garden colonies.
Yeah, we call them Volkstuinen.
Okay, we call them Schrebergarten. Or Laube. And so Deutsche Radio exists already since 2012, and I joined in physically in 2012. Before that, I only contributed radio-related DJ mixes. And there I found out that you can actually do radio from everywhere. You know, if you have a strong streaming service or something like that, and find an antenna, and this is what we're doing. So sometimes we're only broadcasting via microtransmitters. Sometimes we can use the frequency of the free community radio in Berlin.
And gardens also are these gardens also threatened? For instance, here in Amsterdam, these gardens are threatened because they want to make new roads through it, and then become more populated. They're building everywhere, and they need these gardens to transport the new inhabitants of the city, metropole Amsterdam.
Yeah, these gardens were always built or formed on marginal lands. In the neighborhood of railway tracks, for example, is a very popular area because nobody wants to live just across the road from a railroad track. So is that also the case in Berlin, or?
The funny thing is that instead of gardens, now they want to implement beaches, city beaches.
I think we have all of that. I mean, Berlin is a huge city. You know, the diameter of Berlin is 50 kilometers, and also through the division of the city, there are different ways of dealing, and every district of the city has sometimes a bit different rules. In this district where the dacha, the original dacha, is located, which is Pankow, is one of the largest districts in Berlin. Pankow, like Prenzlauer Berg is part of Pankow, and Rosenthal is in the furthest north. So this is where the dacha, the original dacha, is.
Yeah, is this the former East?
Yeah, it's in the former East. This is also where Honecker and everyone lived. So this is Pankow, you probably.
The dachas were originally from the party leaders of the. No.
No. Like the colony where the dacha, the dacha of Dacha Radio is. This is an old colony from 1914. So when they noticed that the First World War would come, people should be able, even in the city, to sustain themselves. It's from the very beginning also very important to grow food, and it's until now in the laws for everything has a law in Germany, of course. So those gardens, you have to grow a certain amount of food. Like vegetables have fruit trees or shrubs, like, I don't know, gooseberries or strawberries or whatever. And this colony Einigkeit, it's called, unity. There are still people living, which is mostly forbidden by now on this allotment garden colonies. But there, because it is this old traditional one, the gardens are a bit larger and so on. But they are threatened because they want to extend the city towards the north, and it's on the border to Brandenburg, which is the Hinterland, there's a lot of rural areas. So they want to spread out the city, but on the other hand, they're very slow with the transport politics. So it's difficult to get there with public transportation and... Yeah, so mobility is a big issue at the moment in Germany, here probably too.
A few years ago, we had some people from Berlin living here in Amsterdam, and they moved to the East Germany and started there a kind of artist in residence, kind of low-profile hotel. No, in the middle of East Germany, somewhere rural. And the plan was to get the people from Berlin over there as a artist in residence or fixing gardens or on a low profile. Is that a thing that developed more or? Yeah.
Very, very much. There are, you probably know Gudrun Gut or Thomas Fehlmann.
Malaria.
Yes, exactly. So like they are also like the foreparents or grand dame of German techno and stuff, and a lot of that scene or other bands, especially musicians, because they have problems more and more to find rehearsal spaces and stuff. They bought these very cheap old farms or schools or something in the villages in Brandenburg, but all over Eastern Germany. Actually, I'm part of one of those projects too, but it's closer to Leipzig. And so there is this, I wouldn't really call it a movement, but it's definitely a tendency. But there are also a lot of failure because people on the countryside, they don't really appreciate those freaks from the city. And the people who move there, they're very naive, and they think that the countryside life will be so much easier and nicer and stuff. And then they realize that actually they have to drive 80 kilometers to get their kids to a Waldorf school. So I'm mocking it a bit, but I think...
What's a Waldorf school?
The Rudolf Steiner.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have the standards from Prenzlauer Berg, if you take the standards of the alternative scene from Amsterdam, and then you want to apply it to a super conservative, right-wing Nazi village, like people who grew, but they're peasant. Many of them are still kind of peasants, or they feel cut off from the democratic processes since 1989. There are some areas where it's really hard, and then those freaks show up, and they are not really adapt. They don't want to adapt. They think they're the cool ones, and the others are just shite. There are good examples too, but so some of them try to bring the culture to the countryside, which seems to me a bit paternal. So Deutsche Radio, we are in this colony, so we have to deal with the people from the colony. But usually we try to have formats where they also can express. So for instance, what you were asking when we had the last festival, the big festival in 2017, we were broadcasting 5 days, 24-hour full program from that garden, and we invited the people for a discussion group with a green politician and to talk about what's happening in Pankow. And there were lots of concerns, and they were very happy to express how it works. And we also had the president of the German Schrebergarten Society, he was part of that panel. So with Deutsche Radio, we really try to be communal as possible. So really have everyone involved, people from very different backgrounds. And I think this is important to also listen. It's a lot about listening. We're all, Gabi, Kate and I, we're all radio artists and also very much intrigued by deep listening sessions. We take sound walks or produce sound walks. So listening to people and what they have to say, and also be patient enough for them to find their voice. People are shy, and that's the thing. What we thought with this radio, with this garden thing, there's something that they can adapt to. They know gardening, and then we're like, okay, no, we'll talk about the plants, and now what else is on your mind? And then people start talking. But if you come and say I'm the coolest techno DJ in the world, I'm just gonna put up this huge sound system here, and you can, and then you can enjoy and come and pay €30 entrance, people might be a bit offended.
Did you try naked gardening?
Naked gardening?
Yeah, did you try naked gardening? Naked gardening is a very interesting thing. Every year there's a World Naked Gardening Day, and this year it was very cold and nothing really happened here. But I did do some naked gardening, and it's really different. And I would,
but you do naked. Hey, but you do naked gardening every day. So what the fuck?
No, I usually wear clothes because of social constraints.
Okay. Now, Naked Gardening Day, just to be clear for the listeners, is actually it's an annual phenomenon. I think it's in May, somewhere at 4th of so 2nd. Yeah. No, I do it every summer, but that's not naked gardening. That's naked beaching. But that's a completely different. That's a completely different.
They're so much better when they.
Absolutely, yeah. But we won't go into details now.
Try screaming. Did you try
naked screaming?
Naked screaming.
Okay.
Naked screaming. I can highly recommend it.
Yeah, I know about that.
Not for anything or against anything. Just scream while naked. Please do it.
Okay. We'll try that sometime. But anyway, so the naked gardening day is in May, and usually it's too cold in May, so it would be better in summer. I don't know why they do it in May, but never mind. No, little bit more about these gardens, because are they only in the former eastern part of Berlin?
No. It's because they already started the gardening movement, also to have garden cities, to free the really miserable workers and have nicer spaces for them where they can grow their own food and be healthy and stuff like that. That's a movement from the 1900s, 19 to 1920s. So, for instance, in Dresden, there's a garden town, really like little houses with gardens for workers, really, and also in West Germany. And there's allotment gardens. You're not allowed to live there, but many people do during the summer, and those colonies are all over, everywhere. They exist in Hamburg and Flensburg, and every city has that because people were suffering from hunger after the wars that Germany started. So this is one of the solutions, to make people their own gardeners or food farmers. And it exists until today. But for instance, there's a generational gap right now. So the younger people, they don't want to, they buy the food in the supermarket, and they prefer to have just a nice lawn and nothing for the bees and pools. So this is one of the issues in the colonies, where you have these old boards and heads of this organization, of these associations, and then the young people coming in, or also, like in Berlin, for instance, diversity is a problem. Is it wheelchair accessible? How about people who are disabled or who are from different cultural backgrounds?
Not to mention black people, I suppose.
We have a huge Turkish and Arab community and lots of Syrian refugees right now. And this is very interesting because there's the allotment gardens, which are very classical, also German Vereinskultur. And then we have also a lot of urban gardening projects where you just have one plot or you share a communal space, and you can, whenever you have the time, you go and grow something. And these are often in like very socially neglected places, and also many migrant women, for instance, like that a lot because they are still come from cultures that they remember more to grow their own food, and they need foods that they don't find so easily. So, Italian mothers or Arab women who grow special herbs or tomatoes or like cucumbers or something like that, where they don't like the quality so much in the supermarket.
Okay. Yeah.
Attention, écoute. I listen to you and I hear that you need a lot of organization to do this garden, to do that garden, and it sounds like there's a lot of rules. On the other side, you said we're artists, we're radio artists. Since 2012, you said?
The Dutch radio exists since 2012.
Yeah,
but
it's not so long. Yet.
From the beginning, part of the team.
Okay.
The rules
So-
are coming from your head now, I think.
Yeah, nee, that was my question. That in what way is it a free cultural space?
The Dutch Hub? Or
Well, be a little bit more precise. What are you referring to? To the whole idea of the colonies of the Dutchas?
Xenia mentioned more organizations in this.
Because obviously you are not involved in the organization of the colonies. It's just organization of Deutsche Radio. So, okay.
When I listen to this information, I hear that a lot of people are doing on their own a little organization. And in what way is it a free cultural zone? Can you be more specific on how that works?
Maybe we can rephrase the question then. Because in a way, these colonies, as you call them, or Volkstuin, as we call them, are somehow interesting social experiments, I would say, because they're coming from an older generation or a previous time when the socialist movement was still very strong. And like you said, nowadays when younger people come, some kind of generational gap exists or starts to appear. But because they are vereinen, associations, they are quite independent. They can do quite a lot of things on their own. This is where the rules come in. So they have all kinds of rules, sometimes too many. But on the other hand, they could be somehow maybe a little bit, let's call them free zones in the city. This is what you were referring to. So if something, wait a moment. If something like Dutch Radio is happening there, then it really becomes interesting because you mix culture, music, whatever, maybe politics, with these organizations, and maybe something new starts to emerge. So that's what I think Kimball is aiming at. So is there a possibility for something to grow out of this?
Okay. Well, there are, we are moving on several levels. So the large thing, like the upper structure, is like there's a law for how a garden in Germany is to be organized, and there either you have like just a free plot and you own it, or you're part of one of those Schrebergartenvereinigen, and then you have to you pay a certain amount, like your rent. Like you rent an apartment, you rent one of those gardens. So you own maybe the hut on the terrain, but you don't own the terrain. But within those house rules, like you have in every house, even in a squat, you can do whatever you like. You shouldn't just disturb your neighbors. So, nobody. We are announcing. We say like, okay, we have this plan, and then we have to talk to the board if they are okay with it, and if they say, yeah, you can do it, we can do it. That's all. It's very simple, and but they don't interfere with the program. They don't put into budget.
The board for permission.
Well, the thing is, we're broadcasting 24 hours, and there are people coming in, and these are like not totally public spaces, they're not gated communities, but they have their own street system, for instance. Like they have to pay for the streetlights themselves and the drainage and stuff. So the whole infrastructure of the place is maintained by the members of those gardening clubs. Yeah. So, of course, they're interested in what's happening there when a lot of strangers are coming in. And then it's also like the question of how much trust there is if they think we invite a bunch of, I don't know, wackos who are totally destroying the place, And
it's a people's...
But it's people organization. And also, they have different backgrounds, historically. Yeah, but that's kind of getting more loose, like everything is not so strict as it was, In the beginning, when they invented it, there were people who had a right background, and there were maybe Nazi members in the 30s, and then others were like Koele Wampe, that was like a total socialist colony. So,
but you have colonies within colonies also?
They're fronts, of course, like in every association, every group.
Are there free areas in the...
there are also
people who love freedom.
Yeah, but they are usually not part of a Schrebergarten colony. This is kind of a contradiction. If you have to like Vereinsleben. If you're not, then you maybe go to a then maybe otherwise you probably go for a Wagenplatz. Wagenplatz, or like where I'm staying.
There was a specific reason that I asked this question. Because apart from the colonies, there are, like you said, also newer places inside the city, in deserted areas or downtrodden areas or whatever you want to call them. Oops. And there sometimes collectives or cooperatives of people take care of that land, and they start growing vegetables there and other stuff, but these are usually communal projects. Maybe they also have a Verein structure, but they are, apart from that, I would say totally different from the traditional colonies. But to a certain extent, from the outside, they look the same. So that's what my question was referring to, so if something like that is possible, if you can have something like Prinzessinnengarten, you know what I'm aiming at, then wouldn't it be possible to turn all these older colonies into this kind of communal projects as well?
No. This urban gardening really stems from interim usage of space, So, for instance, Prinzessinnengardens, where that was a former second-hand car dealership, The whole grounds of it is polluted. So nothing could happen there, and it would cost the city a whole lot of money to exchange the soil of the property until it's have a certain meters to use it for building something. It's not healthy. It's like landfill, because it was one of those Trümmergrundstücke after the war. And Prinzessinnengardens, when they started, they only had a contract for like a year or something like that, and they kept extending it. And now they have a different time frame, but it took them a long time, and also because they are even them, they are very known and legendary in the field. But there are much more of these projects. But often it's just for people start doing a plot like in Detroit, or in New York where it started, and they don't know. Maybe next year there will be a house coming up, you don't know. So urban gardening is a different sort of mindset for people who are more on the move. And if you apply for a garden, and they're very after in the Gartenvereine, you have to apply. You are checked by the board. There's a commission that accepts you, and usually it's for people who are actually wanting to stay a little longer, and have their own little garden and garden properly. And with urban gardening, it's more on the flow. It's much more like now, So with many people who don't really want to have a responsibility for the community, maybe for the community for the time being, but not on the long run. It's nothing with a perspective, really, because you don't know. And Prinzessin and Garden, with their new contract, they're kind of in between, so they're well established, but they are not typical for the urban gardening scene in Germany anymore.
Okay.
They used to be.
Okay.
They were like the trendsetters, and now they're kind of mainstream.
They're running behind.
Yeah, but but it's still like, you don't have your personal plot. You can garden and put your hands in the earth if you like. And in those other gardens, and you are responsible for your harvest and stuff like that, and you can plan ahead. When I plant pumpkins, I can make the pumpkin pies in the winter or something like that. And if you do urban gardening, maybe there are people coming and stealing everything. And
they cut away all your pumpkins before you can even get.
Yeah, exactly. So for many people, after they tried out gardening and felt like, I like this thing. Either they want to move on the countryside, or they are applying for one of those gardens. And so this is what causes this, since urban gardening is so popular, it kind of refueled the idea of getting a Schrebergarten yourself.
Okay. Good. Okay, enough about this. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the radio. Yeah. The first question is, are you broadcasting also illegally? With real transmitters and so on? I heard you say something about micro transmitters, so I guess the answer is yes. But then it's on such a small scale that nobody really pays attention or whatever.
Yeah. It's tricky, and it's even hard. You can't even buy transmitters in Germany. They have a larger range than, say, 7 meters. So I'm experimenting. It's the first edition. It was just mainly because I had to come up with a project to be able to come here and stay in the caravan on the Neuen Meer. But I want to experiment with it, and I already have ideas to build my own bigger transmitter to go travel. And I always work with artists doing live things. So tomorrow the mix will be radio art pieces of mine, and then also my partner in crime, with whom I also sometimes work musically, he is preparing a concert. And then a local joker is Matthias Kau, also known as Klinerman, and he's from Utrecht, and he's going to play live as well. So this is the program, and this is also the idea, that I can travel with my suitcase, with this little broadcasting station, a small mixer, and the devices that I need to broadcast my pieces, and do new field recordings of the places, and also interviews if there are interesting people, and then have some music or whatever, because I have a huge network of musicians from the radio show, and also a club that I owned before.
Morgenavond om 7 op de Nieuwe Meer.
Yeah, tomorrow at 7 o'clock at the Nieuwe Meer, but we will announce it again later on. No, so the answer is partly yes, but you also said in Germany you can't get so you have to build the transmitters yourself, I suppose. So what? How do you? How do you do that if you don't know how to do it?
Well, since we have the internet, you can access plans and stuff. And I'm teaching myself to solder already for some time, to build modular synths. Okay. I built my first synth last year.
You're a hacker.
No, not yet. I'm fascinated, and I know hackers, and I'm fascinated by the culture, and I try to pick up stuff. but I usually try to do things that I need and that I put my heart into. And radio is something that I'm very keen on, and I've always been interested in. And I'm fascinated by the pirate movement, of course. But in Germany, it's all like that was when I was still a child, and I remember the Peilwagen from the Deutsche Post when it was still like the state monopoly to driving around the city trying to find signals from pirate stations.
Were there ever real pirate stations in Germany?
Yes, there was Radio Hafenstraße, for instance, in Hamburg. And Radio Dreieckland, which was the first.
That's one I know.
Yeah, and they were illegal for a long time until they became the first official community radio.
Because they were legalized.
They were legalized exactly 40 years ago. 79. Yeah. So.
And in Berlin?
In Berlin, we had Radio 100, which was after Radio 100 here, but they had to buy the license. That was really tricky. And then there were pirates like P-Radio, and I'm actually with the descendants of P-Radio now. So that was from 1990 or 89 even. Before that, there were radio pirates in East Berlin sending tapes illegally to West Germany, and they were broadcasted via Radio 100. And Radio 100 failed in 1992 because they couldn't keep up with the high fees they should pay to the broadcasting agency.
Okay.
But there were many of those radios, that pirate stations, they got taken away their equipment so many times, and it was just also a matter of resources. If you're in a squat area, and so I think some people still broadcast it with like military equipment from the Second World War in the 80s, but when this was taken away by the police, then there was no chance anymore. And then there was this change of the media law in the 1980s, which was pushed through by people like for RTL and Schawinski in Switzerland, and in the slipstream of this movement in Germany, they also changed the media laws. I think it was in 1987 we had private television and radio, but it's still only like commercially private, and this is one column, and the other column is the public television and radio. And for instance, I'm part of the Free Community Radio Association AMARC, and we are fighting that in all over Europe. It's possible to have the third column for like non-commercial free community radio.
AMARC is international, it's an international association.
And I'm part of the European board.
Okay. Good. So because apart from Dacia radio, you also do something else on radio in the what was it? The Freies Radio Berlin. Yes.
We have a license for Monday to Thursday by now. We had Fridays as well. They were taken away from us. Okay. And we have to share the frequency with several different studios and different broadcasters, or we call them Sender. And not all of them agree to the same idea of free community radio. Okay. So we're. I'm also broadcasting on that station. I have several shows that I'm broadcasting.
Is there a difference between what you do at the Dacia radio and the other programs, or is it basically the same? No. No, Dacia Radio is very much focused on garden issues, ecology, also dystopian futures, like what happens if there's nothing growing anymore, concerns like this, also like nature recordings, spirit recordings. It's very radio art orientated or sound art orientated, whereas my regular program, I present music a lot. Like I have a selection of weird music, or music that isn't heard too much. I have a big interest in unusual music from all over places. So it could be, in Germany it's called world genre, or it could be free composition, electronics, IDM, whatever. And I have a colleague who's very much into classic subcultural things, reggae, punk,
hardcore, you name it. So we have this show called Subkult, Klänge jenseits des Hauptstroms, or Sounds Beyond Mainstream. And this is twice a month. We have a 1-hour show broadcasting live videos and also often live sets with artists. If we have a studio space, which is still a problem for the free radio. We have a proper license, but we can't get any funding. And I was trying to get into the legalization and organization stuff to for instance, found a foundation and a Verein to actually run the radio and be able to apply for funding. But the situation for free community radios in Berlin is different from, for instance, Sachsen-Anhalt or from Baden-Württemberg. Every federal state has different media laws.
Oké. Ja, komt erbij. Ja?
Bart belde net op vanuit België. Dat ik niet goed verstaanbaar was. Daarom heb ik die microfoon nu even bij de mond. Maar hij dankte Xenia. He even wanted to kiss her because he broadcasted on Patapoe Radio once a P radio broadcasting. He said, so he knows all about it. Thank you, Bart, at Belgium. What I want to ask, okay, local media, local papers, local radio, of course we broadcast all over the world, but is so old-fashioned. So how do we get a new, younger generation involved? We are sitting here almost as vroegbejaarden, 60 plus. So yeah, okay. 50. Maar vroegbejaard. But so, is there a possibility to, because you mentioned in the beginning that these younger people are in their own zone and maybe too much involved with their own social media and their own vlogging and blogging and trogging and mogging. So how do we get, hoe geven we het stokje door?
Well, I mean, we're actually addressing, like with my station, if I can call it like that, the Freies Radio Berlin. I'm actively seeking out. I'm reaching out to other groups, being interested in like getting other children, and we're working with the Volksbühne. That they have a P14 called group, which is a theater group for youngsters. I think the oldest person allowed on stage is 21 or something like that, and they have a regular show. Actually, in some German community radios, there's a problem to get people who are over 60. So for the diversity.
So we should almost.
So, also on our frequency, there's also a radio by people who are blind or visually disabled, Ohrfunk. Impaired. I'm sorry, visually impaired. So we're trying, but the problem is again the funding situation, and we don't even have safe studios. Some of our broadcasting groups, they broadcast from the back room of a bar. If the bar is closed, they don't have a place to go. We even had broadcasts from the S-Bahn at some point because there was no space. So, for instance, on the street. Yeah, but we do, but it's not always the weather for it. I don't know if you know the Berlin winters, but minus 20 degrees and radio don't work so well together. Yeah, exactly.
There's always a fire.
This city governments are willing to make more democratisering and inclusiviteit, inclusive. And so you could imagine, okay, there will be enough funding for that.
Yeah, as I said, we have very strong federal laws in Germany. So all the situations are different. You can't compare Hamburg with Berlin. You can't compare Berlin with Brandenburg. But this is the same media, the media board. But for instance, Baden-Württemberg has a totally different mindset on things like that. So it's not comparable, and it's really difficult to make a stand. This is also Amark is really trying to set level for all over Germany, that we have at least the same sort of approach, and also on the EU level, AMAC is also trying to implement this, the acceptance of community radio as a third column in all media laws all over the EU, which hasn't, they wrote a paper about it, but it's not implemented right now. And so we have the problem that we have to deal with Brandenburg as well, and the Brandenburg parliament is totally different from the Berlin parliament. The mindsets are totally different, and they say like, no, our people are not interested in like a wide range of culture and diversity and opinions or something like that. They have one newspaper for the whole county. It's a what to think. Yeah, this is pretty crazy, and so we are fighting on so many fronts, and over time, people get tired, and it's really difficult. You always have the feeling every 10 years you have to start from the beginning. Yeah. And we were never established, Whereas, for instance, there are radios like in Sachsen-Anhalt, in Halle, Saale, there's Radio Korax, and they have institutional funding, for instance, and they have a lot of projects they have access to. There's sort of a beacon project, like a light tower, and they are. I always say they're the Rolls Royce, and we're a trike with a broken wheel. In comparison to to the conditions on how we have to broadcast, So officially, we're not a pirate radio anymore, but from the sources that we have, we definitely are. Even worse than that. I pay a lot of my own pocket, because if I don't find a studio, I have to do the shows from home.
Well, it's the same here. We pay to do this.
And something like, because you mentioned Radio Dreieckland, so something like Radio Dreieckland, can that not function as a model for all community radio stations in Germany, or is that a difficult proposition?
I guess Radio Korax in Halle definitely has some sort of a role model status, Radio Dreieckland, they definitely have a generational problem. They are also very established, and it's also the matter of the town. It's, right in the Schwarzwald and far away from everything.
They became institutionalized, or what? Is that what you mean?
The medium itself is the... Wait a moment.
No, there are what to say. Like the scene in this town is like very static, Whereas in East Germany or further north, there's much more fluctuations in the towns, which also brings like different people, and it's like long-term squads. You have a certain hierarchy, even though they claim to be without hierarchy and so on. I can't really speak for Radio Dreieckland. I know a few of the people from our national conferences, but I can't really say. I just heard that many of the West German stations have the problems that Kimball just mentioned. They have this generational problem. So I also give workshops. I just gave a workshop in Ulm to help them to involve the younger people better and have more communication. Many have a communication problem, because they think, they're only interested in this social media and this forces is crap, and I say, but the idea behind is what you think of, what you can share, and not of what is the division, but what is what you have in common. But this is a major issue.
No, the funny thing is that when we were still doing pirate radio here in Amsterdam, so this is probably end of the 80s or something, we went to Freiburg with a couple of people for some kind of festivity of Radio Dreieckland, and I was struck by the way that they were already operating in a very institutionalized way, even back then, like it was not at all like the way that we were operating here in Amsterdam. It was a completely different kind of radio station. So probably you are right. That is, I would say, the main problem and the reason that they cannot act as a role model. Okay, maybe it's time to listen to something, something that you brought along on the USB stick. So what can we? Yeah, we can try to do that. So what can we listen to?
I don't know. Now this disappeared.
Okay, well I can probably
Show me the file.
put it back, or at least that should be possible. Heb jij verstand van een PC, Hans? Want daar moet je me even helpen. Ik krijg het ding niet weg.
Lego blijven steken.
Nou nee, maar dit vind ik een onmogelijk apparaat. Kun je even helpen? Nou, er moet even een ander schermpje naar voren gehaald worden. Oké. In the meantime, we can... nee, gewoon ja, dit. Oké.
So, yeah, do I have to pull it over?
No, you can just hit whatever you want to listen to.
So I have several entries for awards, radio art awards that I participated in. We could listen to one of those because they're just a minute long. And then I also we have some examples of the music of Christian, who's gonna play tomorrow live at the Neuer Meer.
Something from something that you played on Radio Dacia, I would say.
Okay. So then, yeah.
Radio.
Yeah.
So can you introduce this? What is this?
Yeah, this is a piece that brings together radio in several ways. I've been part of a project long time ago, and so I found this archive of old tapes, and I brought it together with some piece from Africa when I was asked to make a contribution to a project in Zambezi, the Zambezi River. But I guess you hear something else right now. Maybe you have to pull. Vanuit.
Oké, en nu dat andere ding naar voren wat je net pakken.
We zijn op het Airbnb.
Ja, dan moet het even recht.
Ja.
Okay, so this one.
Ja, je kan alles
Just,
Deze?
no, this.
Heb je een deur op
Haze Garden Radio. Nou, daar komt hij hoor.
Die woonde bij de OT 300. Dat zat ook in die stichting. En hij...
Come here and share with us what they have to share with us their stories. That please do not leave your radio wherever you go. If you're going to your garden, carry your radio with you at the gardens there and listen to what other women's projects are.
Okay, this was the first piece, Haze's Garden Radio.
Yeah, and it was selected in Canada for a special mention for a prize on radio art, and then I have a second example from the series with Kofferradio that we're doing this year because we can't afford to make the festival every year. So this year we have 3 special nights called night gardening or Nachtgarten Gärtnern. many people understand Nacktgartenen. Deswegen
Not naked gardening, but night gardening.
night gardening. And the first night we had from the 30th of April to the 1st of May, and we were dedicating the night to the nightingales, because Berlin has one of the largest colonies of nightingales. Yeah, they are all over town, and one of our collaborators, her garden is close to one very huge breeding area for nightingales. So in this piece you will hear Christian, who's doing music tomorrow, also known as Walter Schulze, and he's playing modular synths. I also play a bit of modular synths, and I tell a story about the misconception of the nightingale.
Okay.
Und was hören wir als nächstes?
Als nächstes hören wir die versus der Nachtigall. Versus der Nachtigall. Bei den Nachtigallen gibt es keinen Geschlechtsdimorphismus. Das Federkleid ist bei allen Geschlechtern gleich. Schlicht, doch fein gezeichnet, in einem Spektrum von braun bis kastanienbraun bis braun. Die Brustpartie weißlich. Das Sagen haben jedoch nur männliche Exemplare. Der berühmte, ja gerühmte und oft imitierte Gesang der Nachtigall ist also vielmehr der Gesang des Nachtigall. Warum tut er das? Er ist ein akustischer Leuchtturm. Sein Zwitschern und Flöten soll den abgehängten Nachtigallinnen den Weg weisen. Denn sie treffen später als die Herren aus Liberia und dem Sudan in Europa ein. Nachtigallen sind Langstrecken und Nachtzieher. Wenn sie sich in nördlicheren Gefilden wiedergefunden haben und gemeinsam eine Brutgemeinschaft gegründet ist, singt der werdende Vogelvater nur noch tagsüber zur Feindesabwehr. Die Junggesellen sind auch weiter in der Nacht zu hören. Der Beiname Nachtigall, meist mit einem lokalisierenden Zusatz wie schwedische Nachtigall, Jenny Lind, wird bei den Menschen dagegen den weiblichen Exemplaren verliehen. Vor allem leichte Koloratursoprane und Soubretten werden so bezeichnet. Vor allem im 20. und 21. Jahrhundert eher in abfälliger Weise. Ausnahmen bilden dagegen Kastraten, also die zeugungsunfähigen Männchen, wie zum Beispiel Filippo Baltrati, genannt die Nachtigall des Zaren, oder Matteuccio, die Nachtigall von Neapel.
Okay, this was a very nice piece with nightingales, real nightingales, and modular synthesizer nightingales. Very nice. Can we still hear something else? Maybe something that is not directly connected to Dacia radio?
I guess we can. Let me see how to find the stuff. So, Walter Schulz and I, as a musical duo, we also experiment with the modular synth. So there's another example of this. So we hear the piece called Kachelpalast, and this is a composition for toilets.
gaan tussendoor even proberen te bellen met Klaas. Maar ik weet niet...
Ja, Klaas. Ja, zeg nou eens even je bek hier. Ik probeer te bellen. Hallo, hoor je mij?
Camping radio.
Maar wat hoor je wel dan?
Is het uur al voorbij?
We zijn op de radio.
Het is nog het uur is om 3 minuten voorbij.
Hey, Klaas, vertel eens wat is er aan de hand? Want er was een wetsvoorstel van een paar idioten die vonden dat de rechter maar buitenspel gezet moest worden of zo?
Een wetsvoorstel gedaan door de VVD en het CDA om een nieuwe wet in werking te laten treden. De wet van handhaving kraken.
Dus op nationaal niveau is dit?
Dat is op nationaal niveau.
Den Haag.
Wat het zal betekenen is dat er wordt gezegd dat het kraken iets georganiseerd is en dat daar verder in teruggevonden moet worden.
Georganiseerde misdaad.
Ja, georganiseerde misdaad. En door die nieuwe wet zal het mogelijk zijn om te ontruimen zonder dat er een gerechtelijk bevel aan vooraf is.
Eén vriendje is genoeg.
Ja.
Eén vriendje bij de officier en je kan ontruimen wat je wil, of niet?
Ja.
Dat is het idee. En de rechter heeft het nakijken, daar heeft de rechter helemaal niks meer te vertellen dan in het land?
De rechtercommissaris die kan schriftelijke toestemming geven om binnen 3 dagen te ontruimen. Dat is een onafhankelijke partij, zo gezegd. Of dat dan daadwerkelijk onafhankelijk is, is dan nog een vraag.
Dus ik bel zo'n gast en dan zeg ik van, hé, er zitten wat mensen in de weg hier. Kan je die even eruit gooien? Dan,
Daar lijkt het op.
Oké, nou, alle pandjesbazen in Amsterdam, als je iets te ontruimen hebt, bel de officier, denk ik. Of zo. Is dat het idee?
Nou, het duurt nog even en het is te bezien wat dit verder zal worden.
Ja, en wat gaan we er tegen doen dan? Want het lijkt me niet zo goed als dit allemaal zo doorgaat op deze manier.
Het is goed.
Gaan we ramen ingooien ergens of zo? Of gaan we ergens een fik insteken? Wat gaan we doen?
Ik heb er helemaal geen idee van.
Maar er was wel een soort actievergadering geweest of zo? Of is daar nog iets uitgekomen? Wat gaan we nou doen?
Ja, dat moet nog worden gekeken. Er zal waarschijnlijk ook demonstraties worden gevoerd, maar over verdere...
Wanneer gaan we dan verder praten over wat er gaat gebeuren? Er zullen samen met mensen gekeken worden hoe dat inderdaad aangevochten kan worden. Feitelijk nodigen we iedereen uit om zaterdagmiddag om 3 uur was het toch, zei je? Zaterdagmiddag om 3 uur bij de Green Tribe is er een openbare bijeenkomst waarin we gaan praten over wat we gaan doen met dat fucking wetsvoorstel van die idioten in Den Haag. Die denken dat ze de rechter buitenspel kunnen zetten. Zullen we dat afspreken?
Ja, zeker. Dat is zeker inderdaad goed.
Oké, zaterdagmiddag 3 uur. Green Tribe. Dan gaan we het erover hebben.
Duidelijk.
Oké, dankjewel Klaas.
Helemaal top.
Ben jij er ook zaterdag, Klaas?
Jazeker.
Oké. Nou, we're looking forward to hear your voice.
Helemaal goed.
Oké, later.
Oké, dit was Klaas. Waar was je ook weer van?
Klaas van weet ik niet. Van zichzelf, denk ik.
Oké, Klaas die had het over de nieuwe voorstellen die gedaan zijn over de kraakwet. Daar is het laatste woord nog niet over gezegd, denk ik.
Nee, dat is een wetsvoorstel. En het voorstel is dus om de rechter buitenspel te zetten.
Ja. Nou, het lijkt me geen goed plan, dus daar gaan we tegen demonstreren. Ja, waar moeten we ons melden aanstaande zaterdag?
Zaterdagmiddag om 3 uur bij de Green Tribe. Is er een openbaar...
Weet waar de Green Tribe is?
Oh ja, nou ja, dat is de oude 11. Voor de ouderen onder ons en voor de jongeren onder ons. Tussen de Henk Sneevlietweg en dat andere ding, die rotonde daar.
Oké, bij de Henk Sneevlietweg. Oké, iedereen zaterdag... goed, we gaan nog heel even terug naar onze gasten uit Berlijn. Oké.
Oh, kan ik die koptelefoon dan niet?
Xenia. We are approaching the end of the program. So we are very happy that you came to our studio to tell us something about Deutsche Radio and Freie Radio Berlin and all the other things that came to pass. Maybe one last question, because I have no idea if you know something about that, but some problems are the same everywhere. So here in Amsterdam we also have a very big housing problem, the same or more or less the same as you have in Berlin. And something very special is happening in Berlin, if I'm correctly informed. There will be a referendum sometime next year about re-socializing the big corporations in the housing sector. Can you say something? Do you know something about it? And can you say something about that?
Yeah. Actually, I have a bit of a first-hand information because I'm unfortunately a tenant of Deutsche Wohnen, which is the second largest housing company in Germany. They're stock market based and they're totally into profit. So actually the campaign that led into the referendum is called Deutsche Wohnen enteignen. And of course I signed because I am also, I received a modernization note and my rents should be increased by 100% or 94% if they finish with all the reconstruction and modernization that they're planning. So this is my sense, is that they've got enough votes, because you always need, for the first round you need votes, and they were collecting the votes so you can actually apply to have a referendum, and then it takes another time to actually install the referendum. And the idea is to recommunalize the property that they bought. The red Senate under the left and the Social Democrats sold one of the largest Berlin housing companies, which was city owned, and that was called GSW, and I lived there. But then Deutsche Wohnen bought it and kept money of the tenants, but they're trying everything to make it impossible for us to keep on with the rents. So they're totally profit interested, and they have a strategy of delaying repairs until they're beyond repair, and then they can justify modernization.
They can throw everybody out.
But it's a new thing for us, because for many years, also places that I lived before, we had the problem that they are selling the house and then they want to sell it separately, so everyone is going for a condo, like Eigentumswohnung. But the Deutsche Wohnen is totally interested in the rental market. But they make they really squeeze you out like an old lemon. And the problem is now that they claim to have this lid on, like the freeze of the rentals, but it doesn't apply for everyone who had the modernization notice before that deadline. So it probably doesn't apply to our place, as far as I'm informed, and to many others. And this housing company alone has more than 60 initiatives all over town against them and against the modernization threats that they are putting out.
What the fuck, man? Yeah, re-socialization.
Yeah.
But last week it became known that the city of Berlin bought 670 houses on Karl Marx Allee. Units, apartments. Units, yeah. And I was walking 5 years ago with -14 through Karl Marx Allee, completely empty, very cold. And I looked around and this is opportunity. Why are there no galleries here? And so there was some Russian club there, or Ukrainian club. That's about it. But that was like 5 years ago. And 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Yeah, it was only 5 years ago. It was completely empty there. And so
it was all inhabited.
Yeah? Really? Okay. But what's the plan of the city of Berlin to buy 670 units and then they make it social again or something?
Well, this is a bit of a special thing, because usually in East Berlin we deal with the problem that most of the houses are so old they were in possession of someone else before the war. So after 1990, there were Jewish claims, especially many Jewish people were, they at some point owned the buildings. Like this happened to the club that I had, for instance. But the Karl-Marx-Allee is a special thing because it was all reconstructed. There were just bombed areas, and I don't really know. They were owned by the kommunale Wohnraumlenkung in the DDR. And afterwards, I don't know if it went into the possession of the city or the council or the communal of the district or something like that. Well, there are probably people who know, but I don't live there, and it's a different district from where I live. And I know about my local politics. But the Deutsche Wohnen, which I just mentioned, they also were interested in buying this property. And actually, this is when there was an initiative trying to force the district to buy the places. So this is why yes, but this was a long discussion, and finally they succeeded. But we had this district reform in the 90s where many districts were put together, which are totally different mindseted. So we have and this is the district Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg. Friedrichshain has been the former East, and Kreuzberg has been the former super lefty green West, So that is one of the reasons, and they have a very strong council guy who is into the housing policy, who forced he put this forward. But for instance, in my district, I live in the Pankow district in Prenzlauer Berg. We have also a green Stadtrat, but he doesn't do his job very well. So we were addressing him, for instance, and many other settlements which are now owned by Deutsche Wohnen to prevent us from this crazy modernization fees. But he only did a very lousy job in putting some agency in between for us to communicate with the landlords.
Will the Alte Münze, is a cultuurstandort, will that be developed in a good way, you think? In Central?
I have my doubts because it's a very attractive area, and I imagine that it will be more for the posh projects, But since we have a lot of theaters and a huge cultural scene in Berlin, which used to be state funded but isn't anymore, but is kind of in between and not totally grassroots or squad born, I guess those projects will go in there. But for those who are really, I don't know, communal or low budget or no budget, hopefully the Haus der Statistik will be something. But yeah, we're running out of places. We are running out of space for inner city space, which is accessible for everyone, centrally, where you can do projects or where you can have even administrational stuff. I mean, there's a lot of office work behind all these sorts of cultural events, and even there's no space for it.
And of course, Dutch Radio will live forever. But what do you hope for it will develop into in, say, the next 10 to 25 years?
I don't know. I mean, I have so many different interests myself. So, I mean, at the moment, there are many things that are of concern, the climate movement and so on. So Dutch Radio is just... Dutch Radio is very close to all these processes in thinking of ecology and so on. But for instance, for me, I think communication is key, and this is why I also have my own projects like the Kofferradio. So I think, I hope there will be still FM radio, where the whole world is full of frequencies. You just have to catch them and make them audible to others.
Do you also want to educate people with it, that a new generation can learn how to make?
Oh God, this is and a big issue, because the teaching thing and the social cultural thing, it's really pushed on artists these days, and I start to oppose strongly against it. I want to do my art in the first place. If someone learns something from it, cool. If not, I give a fuck. I mean, but the thing is, the more I want, if I want funding, I usually have to put in something, you have to have a third source of money, you also have to have some sort of educational extra value. And I am really opposed against this bonus system because I think, the art and the culture, they are a value of themselves and they don't have to be profitable or something like that.
Okay, once more, thank you very much. I would like to end with a sad note because one of our good friends, Boudewijn, Rukert, who lives in the Pijp in Amsterdam, had a very nice garden behind his house. But today he put a post up on Facebook that all his plants died and that he decided to make it into one concrete slab.
What?
Oh,
No, really, yes.
What?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
What?
I advised him to take all the earth out and put new earth in.
Save the soil. Save the soil.
Yeah, we actually have actions for
But
that.
if you have a solution for Boudewijn, please come up with it now because maybe tomorrow will already be too late.
I mean, I have an idea. We could make an announcement. People bring flowers and bring new plants because Deutsche Radio also had with Gabi. She had a project in Madrid, and she had the nursery of abandoned plants. So if you want to Amsterdam people, if you have any plants you don't want anymore, bring them to Boudewijn so he doesn't have to live on a concrete slab. This is terrible. No, don't do this.
Invite Boudewijn to come look at the nature of the green tribe and then
Okay.
convert it.
All your abandoned plants to Boudewijn. I won't give his address because then he will really have to be very careful.
I want to know his address.
Yeah, but
I want to know where his house lives.
look him up at Facebook, Boudewijn, and maybe he wants to. So it's not that difficult. Yes. Okay, and one other thing. Tomorrow is the show at Nieuwe Meer from 7 o'clock till 10 o'clock. 10, I suppose most people know where Nieuwe Meer is, but where is it at Nieuwe Meer? Because that might be a difficult... okay, at the Binnenplaats.
There's a little caravan that looks like a... There's a little caravan, and we call it Pietje because it looks like a painting of one of your most famous artists. And yes, exactly. I didn't want to brandish the name, but yeah. So we named the caravan Pietje, and the Kofferradio macro FM station will be right there. We hope to make a recording, and then you can listen to it later on my Mixcloud, which is www.mixcloud.com/Minimatika. This is where you find all my art, radio art, and also old shows.
Piet Mondriaan was known for going to parties with his pipe, and he brought his own tapestry, a 1x1 square meter tapestry. And he put it on the floor and he stand on the tapestry all party long, smoking his pipe.
Yeah, actually, it's about the same size of
a real artist.
Pietje is a very small caravan, so maybe it's about the same thing. We're standing in the same place.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. And once more, we don't have the end tune. I'm very sorry, but it doesn't happen this week, so we're just gonna end it like this, and we'll be back next week, Thursday night from 9 till 10.
Ja, we willen nog wel even de Super Eagles feliciteren, die derde zijn geworden in de Afrika Cup gisteravond. En morgenavond om 9 uur is de finale tussen de leeuwen van de Trianga, van de gastvrijheid, tegen de woestijnvossen. We zullen zien hoe dat afloopt.
En wie gaan er dan winnen?
Ik gok op de woestijnvossen.
Want?
Die hebben volgens mij al 6 keer gewonnen in de geschiedenis.
Nou, dan wordt het tijd dat ze een keer verliezen, toch?
Nou, die Senegalezen zijn inderdaad motherfuckers. Ja. Maar die maken ontiegelijk grote fouten in verdediging, je weet het toch?
Het zijn linker jongens, toch, die Senegalezen?
Ze hebben hele lange neuzen ook al.
Die wil je liever niet over de vloer hebben, toch?
Nee. En die Nigerianen, jongen, die godkoleren, die waren toch wel weer... Een vroege goal. Niet te stoppen. Oh, er wordt gebeld.
Oké, nou we moeten ermee stoppen geloof ik, want het loopt uit de hand hier. Dank u wel en tot de volgende week.
Kies de Sade. Ja. Ben je er nog? Ja. Ja, oké, nou ja, het gaat erom dat het inderdaad van 25 september tot 23 oktober precies 250 jaar geleden is dat Donatien, Marquise de Sade in Amsterdam was. En wie ranselde die allemaal af, jongen?
In Amsterdam West was hij.
Ja.
Hij heeft diverse molens bezocht, onder andere bij het Blauwe Hoofd.
Ja.
En ja, wie heeft hij allemaal afgeranseld? Dat hield niet op, jongen. De dames stonden in de rij.
Ja.
Hey, maar Mo, kunnen we dit volgende week doen?
Mo, we bellen je volgende week weer. Ja. Oké?
Oké dan. Ja,
ja, fantastisch. Dag.